Okay, so I'm back. Got the floor pan prepped. Got all of the old seam sealer, anything that's loose, taken out. Got the bare metal scuffed down. Got the primer itself scuffed down. Vacuumed it out, and then went over everything with some isopropyl alcohol. I want to get rid of any of the oils or greases that have come off my hand, any oil or residue that came from scuffing the paint and cleaning out the old seam sealer out off the paint, so I have a nice surface to work with. Any surface that you want painted needs to be prepped properly, needs to be scuffed. What I've been using is 150 grit sandpaper. This is actually some open tile of sandpaper that I use for brass work when I do soldering. It works really good. It doesn't clog like a lot of sandpaper does. It's a pretty heavy grit, so it works really well. Lasts a long time. If any of these little squares do get clogged up, you can just kind of smack it on your hand and it cleans it out. So it lasts a long time. The only drawback is that it's only about 1.5 inches, 2 inches wide. So whereas the sandpaper like this is wider, but this only lasts, a little while, only lasts, 20-30 minutes depending on how much you're working. That's what I use for the heavy areas where I want to feather down my paint. And then the rest of the scuffing on the primer surfaces, I just use a red scuff pad because you don't need it super heavy. You just want to knock it down a little bit. You want to get a little bit of texture on your bare metal and your primer so that your paint actually sticks, actually adheres, and you have a good bond. So that's what you want to do. Like I said, this is my job. This is what I'm working with. This is how I do my stuff. You can look over YouTube, find other ways to do it, make up your own mind how you want to do it. So let's go ahead and look on the inside and see where we're at. Let's go to that now. All right, so here I've got the door covered up. Like I said, this is just a roll of plastic sheeting that you can buy at most hardware stores. Anywhere they sell paint products, you can get this stuff. Here is that first area that we started cleaning up. So my brake pedal is covered up. Just got that covered up with a Ziploc bag. The gas pedal, it's probably going to be replaced, so I'm not super worried about if that gets painted. My dash is covered up with plastic because I'm not sure what color I want to paint that yet. And then pretty much everything else is exposed. As you can see, it looks much cleaner. All of this has been prepped. Like I said, here is where you want to sand this down. You want to be able to feel this. It should have a nice feather to it. You shouldn't feel any ridges in here on your surfaces. That's going to create bubbles. It's going to create issues where you don't want to have issues. You get problems with the paint adhering. So right now everything looks pretty good. There's no surface stress coming in yet. My passenger door is covered up. I'm not worried about this area here because the window's not in it yet, so I'll go ahead and spray all of this black. Going to spray the top, going to spray the inside of the roof. I've taken my headliner rods out. I'm not going to use a vinyl headliner. I'm going to go with a one-piece headliner. I think they look pretty good. Makes it look a little more modern. Not going to paint the trunk yet, but there will be a little bit of odor spray in there, so I've got all of my old bright work covered up. The floor pan's going to get painted. Up into the trunk is going to be painted, and then here I do have this window in, so I've covered that up as much as I can with some tape, just to keep the window itself, the glass, and all the mechanisms from getting too much overspray. So that's what you want to work with. Got these areas scrubbed as much as I can, as clean as I can. These were pretty hard to get to with what I have, so I've cleaned these up as much as possible. Like I said, I don't want to take out too much of this old seam seal or anything that's pretty well stuck I've left. I don't want to open up myself to too much work. So I'm trying to reduce how much work I create for myself. So what we're going to work with first is laying down the seam sealer. And you want to work with this. You don't want to start here and then work your way to the inside, because you risk stepping on or hitting these seam sealers. So the old adage of don't paint yourself into the corner. You want to work from the furthest point away to your access point. For me, that's going to be my doors. So I'll start here, cover this area, go to the back and work from the back towards the door to leave myself a way out. You know, like I said, you don't want to have to climb over anything that you've already put seam sealer down. So, and I'll do the same thing to the passenger side. So like I said, so this is the seam sealer I'm working with. Got it from my local parts store. Like I said, it's O'Reilly's. Good thing about this is that the hole is already cut. That's really nice. The only thing I got to do is puncture this, put it into my my gun, squeeze it out and embed it. I'll show a little bit about that, how I'm putting it in. Do recommend anytime you're doing painting, anytime you're doing seam sealing stuff like this, to wear a mask, to wear a respirator. You don't want to breathe these fumes in. I don't know what this is made up of. It is polyurethane, so it's probably not gonna smell horribly bad, but you don't want to risk anything breathing stuff like that. You want to take as much care of your body as you can. You know, I've always said the adage, you take care of your tools take care of you. Your body is the most important tool that you've got, so take care of your body. If these tips are not cut, word to the wise, a lot of these come that they're sealed all the way to the end. Don't cut it here. Don't cut it here. Cut it, start from here until you get an opening. Like this one's pretty small. You know, this is, you know, maybe a 1/16 inch diameter hole. So you want to start from the tip, cut it, start to lay your bead down, see what it looks like. If it's too small, if it's too hard to squeeze out of your gun, cut it a little bit further. And cut it further and further until you're happy with how you're laying your bead down. Once you cut it here, you can't put that tip back on unless you have another tip. So you're stuck with a super big bead, and you might lay down way too much bead at one time, and you're going to waste your product. So like I said, that's a tip. That's a word to the wise. Start small, work your way higher, and get the bead that you want. Like I said, so this is already cut. If I don't like how this bead comes out, if I want it to be a little bit bigger, I'll trim it back. Most likely they make this because they know how they want to do it. They know how big the bead is going to be. So we'll see how that works. Let's come back. I'm going to go get my gun, get my respirator, put some gloves on because this stuff is super sticky. You don't want this on your hand. You don't want to try and get it off. So we'll come back. I'll set the camera up on the inside and we'll start laying a bead down and seam sealer. All right, so we're set up here. Got my caulk gun. I've laid down a little bit. I just wanted to do a little bit of test work on some of the smaller areas to see how to lay this out. The bead comes out pretty small, so you can kind of work it in. It takes a little bit of squeeze to get it out of the gun, but that's fine. Like I said, I'd rather have some small coats, some small beads laid over on top of each other instead of one really big heavy bead. So all I'm gonna kind of show is this area, how to bead this in, just to give an idea, and then I'll pause the video, do the rest of the car, and then come back and show how the rest of the car looks once I'm finished beading everything in. So like I said, you want to get it in as much as possible, especially these big areas. So you want to get that nozzle nice and deep in there, and then work your way out as you bead, overlapping to get a good seal, overlapping your seam sealer, and building it up as you come out until you can kind of get a good bead of seam sealer to cover up all of that metal. And then kind of, I've just been like dabbing it towards the end to get it down. And then once you get to the top up here, it's a little bit easier because it's not nearly as deep. One of the other kind of techniques is to kind of fold it back on top of itself as you work your way through. Like I said, you want to cover up the area that you're concerned with. Like I said, for me, the area I'm concerned with is this weld line. I want to make sure that I've got a good amount of seam sealer above and below this weld line. And like I said, this doesn't have to be pretty. This is all going to be covered up with paint and then covered up again with the carpeting. So this is never going to get seen. So again, get it down inside. This is a pretty big area. Get it down inside as much as you can until you can build it up to come out and overlap onto the metal. And this stuff is pretty sticky. It is sticking pretty well to the metal, which is good. That's what you want. All right, so there we go. As does this one. I still got to finish beading this one in. But like I said, I want to work from the inside of the car out. There's the corner that I lay down as much as I can. I might lay a little bit more bead in there just to make sure that that's gonna seal up. It's gonna stick to itself. It does look like it's got some pocketing in there that I want to get rid of. But like I said, I'm gonna go ahead and lay this bead down, lay my beads and my seam sealer on the other side, and then we'll come back once I'm done. All right, so I'm done laying down the seam sealer on the inside. So let's jump in there and see how it looks. All right, so again, there's that front little corner. That wasn't very bad, but that laid out pretty good. Here is one of the bigger areas. As you can see, it's not pretty. Like I said before, it doesn't have to be pretty. It just needs to be in here, and it needs to be sealed and bonded to the sheet metal, which I think it is. Again, here is the back corner. So what I did laying this in was kind of like do a little zigzag motion laying this in. Here is that back corner. This one looks pretty good. Filled that in pretty well. I think I'm pretty happy with that. Here's the back side at the base of the trunk and the pan underneath the rear seat. There is the passenger side that's sealed up pretty good, and the passenger side from the seat riser to the tunnel. So the next thing to do is climb in here, lay down my paint. Like I said, it's going to be Rust-Oleum satin black. Using it on number 3 to get a low output coat. Thing I got to worry about now, since I have decided to spray the inside of the roof, is where I put my feet and my knees to make sure that I don't step on any of the seam sealant. So probably should have sprayed the top half of it first before I laid down my seam sealer and worked from the top to the bottom and then from the inside to the out with my seam sealer. But you make things up as you go along sometimes, and this is what you got to deal with. So I'm just gonna do what I can to watch where I put my feet and my knees, my hands and all that stuff, not to step on any of the seam sealer. Like I said, this has already been wiped down pretty good. Not too worried about what I'm going to get in there with my feet and my knees. If I need to, I can go in with a little bit of alcohol on a rag and wipe down the floor pan before I spray it. But I'm going to go in, put my mask on, put my gloves on so I don't get paint all over my hands, don't breathe it in, and then we'll come back and we'll see what it looks like once I'm done with the painting. All right, see you in a bit. Okay, so had a little bit of a hiccup with the paint. Only bought 3 cans of the black satin Rust-Oleum, which was not enough to do the entire interior since I decided to do the inside of the roof. Luckily enough, I had some black chassis paint from Eastwood, which I used for that. That was actually just primer, but that's okay. It covered up what I needed it to cover up. It's drying a little bit of a different color, but that's okay. I can come in later, probably next week or the next weekend I work on the car. I'll go out and I'll buy a couple more cans of the Rust-Oleum and lay down a little bit, another coat of the paint. So let's go ahead and see what we've got so far. Okay, so here's the inside of the car. Gone ahead and taken out all of the plastic. As you can see, the passenger side is drying a flatter color than the driver's side. Most of the passenger side was just the Eastwood chassis primer, which is more of a flat black. The driver's side is a little bit of that underneath, and then top coated with the satin black of the satin black Rust-Oleum. A little bit of a brain hiccup there. As you can see, started running out. Didn't quite coat as much as I wanted, but that's okay. I can leave everything out of the interior for now. I'll just have to find places to where I can put all of my seats and stuff that were in here. So next week I'll probably go. I actually kind of like that flat look. They do sell the Rust-Oleum in a flat black instead of a satin. I kind of like that flat look. It looks pretty good. So I might actually go and get some satin just to cover this up, and then next time I paint it, I'll just rough sand this again. Like I said, I'll just scuff it and then cover it all up. That's quite a bit glossier than what I wanted. I do like that flat look. That looks really good. And then, like I said, I didn't do the doors yet. Still debating on what I'm going to do with the door, so I didn't want to get any paint on them. Didn't paint the dash again. Like I said, I don't know what exactly I'm going to do with the dash. Don't know if it's going to be black or body color. But the inside of the roof is done. Not too worried about how that looks. I mean, there's some spotting in it, but that's okay. It's going to be covered up by the headliner. I might not even worry about the color of the floor pans. You know, like I said, it's all going to be covered up. It's a pretty good coat, so not too worried about what it looks like, whether or not it's flat or it's a little satiny close to gloss. It's not that big a deal. It's going to be covered up by sound deadening and paint, or excuse me, sound deadening and carpet. So that's how it finished up. That's how it turned out. Learn from my mistake. Always buy more than you think you need. Think it through. Like I said, I initially was just going to paint the floor pans, so 3 cans of the satin Rust-Oleum probably would have been plenty. Once I decided to paint the roof, the inside of the roof, the inside of the quarter panels and all that stuff, cost me probably that extra can. So I probably needed to get 5 cans, maybe 6, to get a good layer in here. Like I said, I probably will go out and get a few more cans of the Rust-Oleum. If I do, I'll get the flat. I like how that looks a little bit better. Doesn't really matter, it's going to be covered up. But there are some spots that I did miss. Up inside the firewall, I needed to get to a little bit better. A little bit, like you saw, a little bit of the fading on the back by the seat. Wasn't quite covered as much as I like. It's primer underneath, so it's not a big deal. I'll look at it next week once this cures completely. Dry to the touch, 2 to 3 hours, you know, to where you can touch it. Not fully cured for most of this paint for 24 hours or so. So I'm gonna let this sit, done with it for the weekend, let it cure, come back, look at it next weekend, see what it looks like, and go from there. So if you like the channel, continue to follow it. As always, peace and love to you guys. Have a good Mustang day.
Project 68.